Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. Just wanted to do a quick review video because it's been a little while, and also this one was kind of on my mind, so I figured I should go ahead and do it. I recently had done for Framed in September. So first of all, I'm not sure when this will go up. I'm planning on possibly posting it right away, but in case it doesn't go up right away, this is a video that is being recorded in October. Early October. But for Framed in September, I read The Art of Beatrix Potter, Sketches, Paintings, and Illustrations. I showed this book to my dad, who, if you remember from last Framed October, if you remember from last Framed in September, I showed our home gallery, which is basically the many paintings that he has made in our house over the year. It's not too far off the truth to say that we have a gallery. I even have one of his paintings up here. But when I showed him Beatrix Potter's work, he was really impressed with her artwork, partially because of the fact that she tended to prefer to use watercolors. And my dad, who is more of an oil, I think it's oils that he uses. He's more of an oils painter, and he says that one thing with watercolors, it's very hard to fix any mistakes. So he was very impressed with her work, and he loves the look of pen and ink with watercolor, which seems to be her preferred medium. One of the things that, first of all, her artwork's beautiful, and anyone who has read Beatrix Potter knows how, or even just seen any of Beatrix Potter's art, just like in the typical Peter Rabbit, etc., knows how beautiful that artwork is. But I just flipped to a random page. This is not one of her watercolors, but this is one of her, I think it's actually, it's just an alternative title page for The Tale of Two Bad Mice. And this is pen and ink. They have in here, like, where she did art studies for the rabbits, try different positions of the rabbits' heads, where you could see where she was just sketching ideas out. What I did really like, though, actually here is that preparatory sketches for Peter Rabbit. I'm having trouble speaking today, guys. Preparatory sketches for Peter Rabbit, and this is in pencil and pen and ink. So you can see the processes that she was going through to get the head and get the really rabbity movements. And she got a lot of her inspiration from nature itself. She studied nature very closely. She actually wrote a scientific paper on like mushrooms and stuff. She was very serious about her scientific studies, and she was constantly sketching from nature. She had a, I think her rabbit was Benjamin Bunny, and she had several animals that she really loved, who were represented in some way, shape, or form in her work, and also, were either they were directly in her work, like name and everything, or they were used as like character study, for lack of a better term, or used as sketch models. But that is part of the charm of her art, is that it's so influenced by nature. She made a point of making head movements very much like what you would see in nature, and imitating a lot of the mannerisms of the animals in question. And when she would do the coloring of the paintings, she would make sure to get the coloring right, to the point where there were a couple instances where her publisher objected, and she would bring like a toad into the office and be like, look here, this is a real color for a toad. Or I think it wasn't a toad, I think it was a frog. But she did that a couple of times where they're like, actually, and she'd be like, no, here, let me show you. I'm right, you're wrong, keep my coloring. So it was really kind of funny. I don't think she got married until her late 30s, if I remember correctly. And when she wrote Peter Rabbit and all the other books, they helped her gain some independence. So she was able to buy her own land and eventually meet the man who was to become her husband. But until that point, she was like many women. I think she was Victorian era. So like many Victorian women, if you were not married, you lived with your family a lot of times. So when she was able to make her own money and live on her own, it gave her sort of independence that she never would have experienced before that point. Oh, here's another. This is wash and pen and ink. Ow, smacked myself in the face. So this is wash and pen and ink to get that kind of old-fashioned look. And one of the things I enjoyed about this book as well, besides all the pretty art and the short bursts of information about Beatrix herself, this book is heavy. I enjoyed learning about all the art techniques. I felt like I absorbed them better in this book than I have in other books about art that I've read in the past. And I've read quite a few books with art history, because she used a lot of techniques. She used a lot of watercolor and ink. She used, did markings, because I would go and I'd ask my dad some questions, because like I said, he is an artist, but I would also look up. So grisaille is one method where she did painting in gray monochrome, typically to imitate sculpture. She didn't use that one very often. She used a lot of washes, and a lot of times that's with watercolor. Here we go. Wash a layer of paint or metal spread thinly over a surface. So it's just to give that slight feel of color. And then I wanted to, let's see, where is it? I have something marked up here. Oh, that's what that was. But other things, I have things like, I think these are just pieces of art that I enjoyed. Oh, it just mentioned that Potter never felt confident drawing people and continually struggled with depicting them throughout her career. Which, in the little bit I've seen of her people, can't really say that I've noticed, although she definitely does seem most comfortable when she's depicting animals. I'm just trying to find, oh, here's some of her spores. And that's actually something that she got complimented on, how accurate her nature artwork was. That, I'm not sure if I marked the place, but later on, a person, oh, here it is. This is a book called Wayside and Woodland Fungi. And brilliant amateur naturalist and artist that she was, in the end, Potter did not seem to aspire to make a name for herself in the field for her research. Her theories on lichens, as well as her thoughts on fungi hybridization, would, however, eventually be proven long after she had carefully stored her hundreds of illustrations in their portfolios. During the height of her mycological work, she had hoped that her illustrations might one day be published in a book. "I've been drawing funguses very hard. I think someday they will be put into a book," she wrote to Walter Gaddam, the 5-year-old son of a cousin in 1897, "but it will be a very dull one to read." Nearly 70 years later, a former president of the British Mycological Society, W.P.K. Findlay, was surprised and inspired to discover that Potter was a keen naturalist who had left a prolific volume of very accurate and beautiful drawings of plants, fossils, and fungi. Findlay had the pleasure of untying these tapes from the portfolios in the Armitt Library, now the Armitt Museum and Library, and selected 59 illustrations for the fungi volume of the Wayside and Woodland series, published by Warren in 1967. I believe Warren was actually her publisher, if I remember correctly. But yes, I thought that it was kind of cool that she did eventually get her works published, her artwork published for a scientific work, like magazine, book, like she always thought she would. Now, I do have a note here that she had, first of all, it says here that she had her paper, that it was an academic paper for the Linnean Society of London on the germination of the spores of Agaricinae. Yeah. So that's some sort of scientific name of spores, that was presented by George Massey on April 1st, 1897. And it says it was remarkable that Potter's paper made the agenda in the male-dominated Linnean society, but it was never considered seriously for publication. Now, one of the things I had noted when I was reading this section is that if Beatrix Potter had been alive in an era that would have taken her more seriously as a scientist, i.e., not when all the sciences were, predominantly male dominated, we probably would have gained Beatrix Potter, the scientist/naturalist, but we would have lost Beatrix Potter, the storyteller. And I think that the world in general has benefited more from having Beatrix Potter, the storyteller. Beatrix Potter, the naturalist, would have faded into obscurity. Beatrix Potter, the storyteller's stories and artwork has lived on and has been enjoyed by many, many generations of children and adults as well. So, selfishly, perhaps, I'm really glad that she did live in an era where she did not end up pursuing scientific, the sciences as a career, and instead turned to storytelling. Now, she always had a tendency to tell stories about nature, but if she'd been busy in the sciences, she might not have been as likely to indulge that side of her mind in favor of focusing on the scientific side of things. So I'm glad that she got to enjoy, writing her papers and, observing nature and everything like that. And for her sake, I'm sorry that she had the frustrations, but I am really glad that we got her as a storyteller. I was trying to find some of the other art techniques that were mentioned. Okay, so for example, it mentions here watercolor opaque dry brush style, similar to gouache, Gouache, which I have a note about earlier, but with a bit more dilution and the pigment to allow for more depth in the painting. And on page 55, that's the note I was looking for, was the one on gouache, where it's basically almost directly, it says a method of painting using opaque pigments ground in water and thickened with a glue-like substance. So it sounds like it's very much, and let's see which one is done in gouache. Okay, this one. So this bottom one is the one done with that particular thicker pigment technique. So yeah, I really enjoyed learning about the different art styles that she engaged in, not art styles, but different mediums that she used for her art. Some of her art was more painterly. Some of it, usually the stuff for her actual books, were less painterly. So you had the painting, but it wasn't, and by painterly, I mean that you don't see necessarily the edges as much of the, I'm trying to find one that's particularly painterly. Let's see. It's very much more focused on the painting than on the drawing of it. So you don't see clear edges like with a pencil. Let's wash again. Okay, so I would consider this one more painterly, although you do have some more lines there. Let's see. Oh, here we go. This is one that she did. So it's the top one. That's particularly painterly. So, yeah, I really enjoyed learning about the different art techniques, seeing all the beautiful paintings. It made me go and pick up, hold on. So first of all, I found this used, and something I mentioned in the past is I've kind of felt cheated insofar, my glasses have smudged, insofar that in spite of spending the years from like 5, because I turned 5 when I was there, of years like 5 to like 9, almost 10 in England, I never read Beatrix Potter as a child. All of my exposure was, alarm went off. All my exposure was just through social consciousness. But I ended up picking up Beatrix Potter, The Complete Tales, because I felt gypped and I wanted to read her work with the original art. The way it's described, it sounds more like fairy tales than anything else. And yes, I picked up a child's book for myself because I wanted it. So no excuse that I don't have. Oh, isn't he cute? Look at that puppy. So, yes, I have no excuse of having nieces or nephews. None of my friends' small children are in the area. So this is 100% a self-indulgent purchase because I wanted the artwork and I wanted to read the stories I never got to read as a child. I'm sorry, these are, the artwork in here is absolutely adorable. I can't wait. Oh, this is going to be so nice. Such beautiful work. So, yes. Completely self-indulgent. Lovely little box set. My box is a little bit of wear and tear, but the book itself is in beautiful condition. Very excited about this. So that is entirely the fault of the art of Beatrix Potter. Sketches, paintings, and illustrations. This also woke up in me a desire to at least do a little bit more in the way of painting. I used to do pastel painting. I don't really quite feel like drawing so much right now, even though I have the capacity to do so should I wish. And I am going to have to leave pretty soon because I have to live stream. But I have been working on my book journal. Not my book journal. I've been doing that too. I have my normal journal, and this is related, honest. I decided that I would start using some techniques. So I'll do either complete watercolor, which this is watercolor pencil here, or pastel, which is what the other page is, the one over here. And that's pastel pencils, although I did find my pastel collection of like actual stick pastels. I don't like the oils. I use the chalk pastels. And so, yeah, just gonna experiment with different techniques. This is watercolor pencils. Well, although this time I actually got my brushes now, so I'm able to wet the brushes and watercolor pencils and then paint with the brush, which gives a little bit more of a feel of an actual watercolor versus a watercolor pencil. And I think it does give a little bit more of a watercolor effect. So maybe eventually this will lead me back into some drawing again, but I am enjoying the painting. Now, unfortunately, I only have 12 colors in my watercolor pencils, but I have gone ahead and managed to having a little sample on here just so I know what I'm working with, so maybe I can mix the colors. And I did the same thing with my pastel pencils, which I do have more of. I have them separated because I haven't had a chance to spray them yet. I don't want them to blend against each other because I didn't think in the ahead of time when I was doing the pastels and I put them facing pages to each other instead of leaving blank pages. Here are my pastel pencils. I think I must have picked these up for an art class I had in college, you know, from the community college over the summer. And my normal pastels are in a big old like tackle box down there with my color wheel and everything. And I did pull out a couple of my pastel books. I hope to get some watercolor ones. And I opened to a random page, which actually is going to be really useful. It talks about how to keep your hands clean during pasteling. I used to use gloves. The thing is that I don't feel like you get as nice of a feel while you're working, and it kind of messes with that. But I used to use, latex gloves, so I could just change them out when they got too colored. But it gives some, ideas of how to keep your hands clean and keep your colors from blending when you don't want them to. And this one here has some ideas about using pastels and watercolors together, using pastels and colored pencil together. So I look forward to experimenting and kind of diving into that again. And this is 100% influenced by Beatrix Potter and reading this book. And then as I've used more Beatrix Potter stamps as well. But I do need to get going. I really enjoyed reading this. I really enjoyed kind of the interest and joy of art that it's opened up for me again, even if it's only going to be using, at least right now, using the artistic mediums when it comes to stamps. Okay, I gotta go. Have a very blessed day. I will see you the next time. God bless. Bye.